Hi, Nick Rains here from Leica Academy Australia. I'd like to welcome one of our other instructors to the camera and share the spotlight for a few minutes. This is Mark Strachan, who does our portraiture workshops. And I thought rather than just show still images on the website, it'd be nice to actually hear from the man himself, the story behind some of his more interesting photographs taken over quite an illustrious career. So welcome, Mark.
Thanks for having me, Nick.
Pleasure, absolute pleasure. So we've got some quite interesting photographs to show, but just give us a quick overview of your career so far, because I think it extends back pretty much the same length as mine, which is more years than I care to remember.
Yeah, it's quite a number of years. I got my first camera when I was 7, which was a plastic Diana F camera that took 120 film, and that was where it all started. But at the age of 16, I was working part-time for a newspaper group. So photojournalist, that was my start, I guess. And I guess it really progressed from there. I very soon after the age of 16 had my own studio, and I've done pretty much all manner of photography styles, I guess, in the 38 years I've been doing it.
38, okay, you're ahead of me then. I started a bit later, but that's amazing. So how on earth would you get into newspaper work at the age of 16? That seems very sort of wet behind the ears.
I really liked the idea of being able to get access to places that people couldn't get access to, sports games and car accidents and all those sorts of things. And I really got a buzz out of that. So I pretty much just kept on going up, knocking on the doorstep and knocking on the door rather, and having meetings with the editor. And finally they relented and they gave me a Nikon kit with 3 lenses to borrow. And I got $10 per black and white image published. So I could shoot 20 or 30 images a week and then might get 3 or 4 published. So it was the grand old wage of about $30 a week for me back in the early 80s. Yeah.
Those are the days. All right. So look, there's some of these pictures. I'm just going to share my screen here. So we'll flick over to a set of thumbnails that Mark sent me. So hopefully everybody can see those okay. All right. So Mark, there's this picture I've seen a couple of times. I'm just going to enlarge that. Tell me the story behind this one.
Well, I'd been, it's an interesting backstory. I'd been to New York probably 3 or 4 weeks prior to that, and I'd photographed Barry Humphries for an Australian magazine. And I'd come back via Paris, and because I'd used high-speed film to do the shoot, they'd run my films through an X-ray machine, totally ruined them. So I came back, said to my wife, I've got to go back and shoot this job again because the film's all been fogged. She said, well, it's my birthday. And I said, well, come with me. So we went to basically New York for 3 or 4 days. She came with me. And I said to her, look, you'll never see all of Manhattan in 3 or 4 days. So we hired a chopper. I showed her many of the sights from the air. And we just happened to be over the Hudson. And I was shooting at this helicopter with an M6 and a 35mm Summicron lens, and just the Statue of Liberty and the Twin Towers aligned. And I thought, that's a really great picture. So I made the image, and it just pretty much just went in almost as a tourist image in my archives. Never really thought much about it, and it wasn't until, of course, that fateful day about 1 year later that I actually had the need to go back through my archives, and I was thinking, I'm sure I've got a couple of good images of the Twin Towers, and sure enough, this was there.
Wow! And so did it? And it ended up getting published again because of what happened in 2001.
It did, yeah. So in 2002, I offered the image to both the New York Times and The Age, and The Age were the first people to say we want it. And it ended up being the front cover of the Sunday Age, commemorating the 1 year anniversary since the attacks.
Wow, that's amazing, and that's America. So then these pictures are a little bit out of order. Mark and I were trying to put them in order, so just forgive us. But this is a picture of Mark with his M9. But I'm gonna, shall I just skip forward a couple just to give context? So we'll go to this one, which is this in our Leica Academy book? I believe it is.
It is, yes.
Yeah, because we all submitted, there's a Leica Academy book, which is in the process of coming to Australia because of all the restrictions at the moment. It's been delayed. But Mark, Jesse, myself, Darren Senifanto, I think, we all submitted images for it, and we've all got 2 or 3 pictures in the book. So this is one of Mark's. So tell us a little bit of a story about your Africa trip.
Well, in 2009, the Cotton On Foundation contacted me. I've known Nigel, who founded the Cotton On Group. I've known him for a long, long time, and they approached me about going over to Uganda to a tiny village they sponsor, and doing a positive assignment, I guess, for a coffee table book. So their brief was that they wanted to show hope, promise, and optimism through my eyes in this tiny village that they're sponsoring, rather than the devastation and hunger and all those sorts of things. So pretty much,
a very, bright photograph, very much full of life, I think.
Yeah, and I was really quite taken when I got there. The children were amazingly happy and fulfilled, and they wake up in the morning and they're alive, and that's enough reason for them to celebrate life. And so apart from this image, a lot of their daily activities involve scrunched up garbage bags with rubber bands all around them, and they play soccer for hours with that makeshift soccer ball. And so I was actually really found it challenging on one level, but quite fun on the other level, seeing how they had so much joy and delight in just going about very simple and basic play activities during the day. So I happened to go for a bit of a walk down the road, and all the dust and dirt is very orange over there, and it's 6 hours from Kampala, and basically saw this group of children playing with this old tyre. So I just sort of said, look, don't mind me. Of course, I stood out like a sore thumb in the middle of Africa with my very white skin, but got them just basic to continue doing what they were doing with their playing, and happened to pan this image at a relatively low speed, and got what I thought was an interesting picture.
Oh, it's a terrific picture, because the whole set is pretty good. It really captured. This one is for the same shoot, am I right? Just checking.
This is actually 2 years later.
Okay, in that case, I'll stop there. I'll go back.
Yeah.
And so this is another picture I've seen of yours before. I'm not sure how I'd feel about sharing a camera in different a stranger, shall we say? But it's a great photograph. Tell me how this one came about.
Well, innocent group of kids. They're probably, I don't know, between sort of 8 and 10 years old, and they were very curious about me photographing. And so what I did was I basically I had the M9, and I was very fortunate to get a pre-release version of the M9 from Leica Australia, and I was able to take it overseas with me and shoot the whole assignment on the M9. But I took an M8 with me as my backup camera in case I had any issues. And I took, of course, about 30 batteries as well, because I didn't even know if I'd have electricity available to me.
Good point.
But this child was very curious. So what I did was I pre-focused the lens on about 4 feet or something, and handed it to him and showed him where to look through. And he, I guess, did a bit of a mock photograph of me, but he actually, he made the exposure. And because I'm a very typical awkward photographer, I hate being photographed. I always look like I've been slapped across the face. And the photograph that he made was one of me being super off guard and very relaxed. And I've got to say, it's probably one of the best portraits I've seen of myself ever taken, because I just didn't actually think it would work out.
That would be this one.
That's right. Yeah. That's
excellent. Right. Brilliant. Yeah. I didn't know until you just told me that. I've seen this picture before, but I didn't know that this picture was taken by that young man. That's awesome.
Yeah, I should have recruited him. He could have come.
And it is a great picture of you, actually, like you say, because we're all a bit tense in front of the camera. I know, and self-conscious, and this is a genuinely relaxed moment. So that's terrific.
Yeah, I was
I'm really going to go back to that other. Sorry, mate. What was that?
I was really impressed with how well he did it. He just basically lined me up and photographed me, and to this day, I still look at it as being one of the most successful portraits I've ever had of myself.
Brilliant. So now I'm going to skip forward to that shot, which was not quite the same shoot, but a couple of years later, you said. So this actually fits so many of the things that you and I talk about in our workshops. Is that little point of interest, that moment, that just the one thing that your eye goes to, and this sort of epitomizes that. But where is this, a schoolroom or something?
It's a church. The Catholic church in the middle of the village is very much the hub in the wheel, and many people on a Sunday will walk 5 or 6 miles each way to get to church on that day. It's a very social thing for them, and there were a whole lot of children there in this congregation, and I was working from the back of the church as discreetly as I could with my M at the time, at M240 I was using at that time. And this child happened to look around, and he was looking through the stained glass, and there was no direction from me whatsoever. But it struck me with, I was photographing all of the because they had either very short hair or shaved heads, and there was a lovely sea of shiny heads, I guess. And this young boy turned backwards and looked through one of the stained glass windows. He put his hand on his other eye. And whilst I love that element a lot in the break in the pattern, what I also love is the kid behind him giving me a bit of a greasy. He's looking back saying, "What are you doing?"
Oh, yes, I can see here. Here, he's just like looking through the gap. I missed that. Yes, yes, yes. It's those little unseen parts of the pictures that sometimes you only maybe notice them later on as well.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, now what's the next one we got here? Whoops, got to click on the screen to activate it. There we go. So this is clearly Africa, but where's this? Uganda again?
This is actually in Kenya.
Kenya.
Yeah, so it's southern Kenya, right on the border with Tanzania, and that's Mount Kilimanjaro. And
okay.
we went out on safari a number of times, and not that you ever get bored of safaris, but when you're going out 2 or 3 times a day, you're packing your gear, unpacking your gear, unloading, downloading your cards on your computer, doing things for social media, and then you're making sure your batteries are charging, going back and doing the whole thing again. This particular morning, and I knew at this time of the year, it's always very difficult to get the peak of Kilimanjaro visible because there's always low-hanging cloud. And this particular day we went out, and we had a private guide, which was great. So it was just the 2 of us in this car. And we noticed, even though it was quite early, the clouds started to clear a bit, and we started to see a bit of snow at the top of the peak. And I thought, well, how amazing is that?
Here we go.
And so we just parked and we waited. And then just out of nowhere, these 2 elephants just started walking across in front of us. And so I made a number of exposures, but this is the one where I felt that just the balance and I guess the momentum of the elephants walking across the front of frame was really working for us. So
that's serendipity, and this is a good exercise in being prepared, because you never know what's going to happen. You don't want to be fumbling around with cameras. That's that muscle memory. Just get it shot. That's fantastic.
That's right.
Now it's another change of pace. So from Africa to who's this gentleman?
This is my mentor, actually. He's the late Peter van der Veer. He and I crossed paths in the 80s. Wonderful, wonderful eye, but a very free spirit. So, he really was bad as a business person. He just wasn't really good at running a business, but he was an amazingly talented photographer. So he and I worked together for quite a number of years, probably about 20 years. And he worked as a bit of a gypsy. He'd turn up at the studio some weeks, and then other weeks he'd go disappearing for 3 or 4 weeks. So he was a very difficult person to manage, but an amazingly insightful character artistically. But this is a photograph I made just a year before his sad passing. We were actually at my studio, and we were having a bit of a chat. And I happened to have the monochrome, the original monochrome M camera, and with a 50mm Summilux on it. And he was a very expressive guy. He used his hands for everything. And so the very interesting thing is that I thought, well, this could be the last time I photograph Peter. And as it turned out, about a year later, he was dead. So, but what I do love about the image is it shows his warmth. He could also be a very brutal person in terms of his critique of photography and people's ways of doing things. Even criticised my darkroom technique, for goodness sakes. So he's a very hard taskmaster, but an amazingly creative guy, very gentle, but very harsh at the same time. But he was always using his hands. And I think that when I got this picture of him, and there were a lot of others on the in the shoot as well, I probably photographed him for 45 minutes. If I threw all the others away and kept this would sum up my whole relationship with him over the 20 years we knew each other.
There's a lot of life. And to me, what makes this picture work is that catch light in the eyes, as well as all the elements of the hand are in just the right place. But it's that catch light, because it makes them look alive. So all the elements work together very well. But to me, that's what really lifts it, is that little sparkle in the eyes. And it's great. It's a great portrait. Of course, portraits is your thing, really, isn't it, Mark?
It is my thing. I mean, I feel that I do adequate travel photography, but I love the interaction and the bounce back I get from interacting with people. So if I had to choose one genre to continue with, it would be people photography. But you'll notice that, aside from the elephants, of course, a lot of my travel pictures do actually have a human element with them, and that's I get to
I
marry
have
my love of
noticed that.
travel with my passion for interacting, with
Yeah.
people.
See what the next one is. So that, so travel, people, interaction. So this looks like a place I recognize. So and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is Home Valley in the Kimberley when
It
we
is
were doing the
indeed.
Light Academy workshop up there, and Mark was
Absolutely.
along. And is this on the monochrome as well?
This was on the M240.
Okay, all
Um,
right.
this was an image that was made, I guess, very unconventionally.
Mm,
The way I photographed it was on my belly with my camera under the fence,
yeah.
knowing that all I had to do is move a couple of centimeters to be sort of out of harm's way. And I had
Mm,
a Noctilux, a 50mm 0.95 lens on it with an ND filter. And so I was able to dial the shutter speed right down because I really wanted to get some movement, because when you're laying on your belly with a bull charging past you, you actually feel the vibration of
Oh
everything
yeah,
that's going
that's
on.
for sure. Yeah, yeah.
Um, and so I think this was shot maybe at 30th of a second. But what I love is the tips of the horns are a bit blurred, and it almost looks
Yeah,
like
yeah,
a
I can see
charcoal
that.
drawing.
You can see it clearly here and here. It's
Yeah,
really quite amazing that. Yeah, I remember you shooting this one and thinking, yeah, it's different because a lot of people are going for the dust and the color, and because this is actually quite late in the afternoon. But this is just going for shapes really and drama. I think you pulled off, and also the attention of the left-hand horse woman is straight towards the bull's head. So you've got like this eye line as well. So you've got a nice little triangle to hold your head in.
yeah,
It's worked really well. I think what's coming up next. No, it's a slight change of pace. So there's this one is the result of this shoot, isn't it? So
that's
this is
correct.
an academy workshop that we did, or you did. I wasn't there. Was it at the Steam Rail place in Melbourne?
Yeah, Steam Rail Victoria, when
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
open before the big fire.
Mm,
And we had a Russian model called Yana, who's pretty well known to a lot of Melbourne and some Sydney people.
mm-hmm,
And I had an amazing makeup artist, a stylist as well, who was able to get all the steampunk gear for us, for her to wear. And we transformed her from a very pretty Russian girl into this very strongly stylized steampunk look. And so the thing I love, this is also photographed with the Noctilux, and an amazing lens. I mean, I went from being a reasonably proficient photographer after many decades of working and getting everything in focus to feeling like I was a 15-year-old with a brand new camera, because every second
yeah,
image was out of focus. And,
yeah, you're not the
and
only
in fact,
one.
it was probably 1 in 10 I'd get close to nailing, and probably 1 in 20 I'd get really bang on. And this is an image I got bang on.
Mm-hmm.
So what we did in this particular instance is we worked primarily in the shade with the light coming from behind the model.
Yeah.
And you'll notice on the ground there, just in front of her feet, there's a shadow line from the roof of the building.
Yes, yes.
What we got her to do is to move ever so slightly forward until her head, or her hair rather, broke the shadow. And that just
Oh,
gave a
yeah.
little bit of rim lighting that kissed.
I see. Yeah, yeah,
To
yeah.
the left, you'll notice 2 very big reflectors. And this is very much not the way I work most of the time, but we had 2 reflectors there. We had the reflector that's closest to camera is a silver reflector, and the reflector in front of that is a translucent reflector. So what we did
Oh,
was
I
we
see.
allowed
So
the
yeah,
light to skip
yeah,
and
yeah.
hit the silver reflector, and then we scrimmed it
Clever.
with the reflector in front of it. So we got ourselves very beautiful studio type lighting, but using nothing but the sun.
Yeah, so you end up with something incredibly polished. I mean, you can see that little catch light on her hair, just
Yes.
that little hint there. And and the depth of field fall off is typical of the Noctilux. So that worked out really well. So if you're interested in learning more about portrait photography, Mark does teach an excellent course. And when we're all allowed to get back together again, I suggest you sign up for one of his portraiture courses, and you can learn how to do pictures like this. So now then, this is a picture I've not seen before. Is this recent?
This is about 2015, I think.
Oh yeah, relatively recent. Yeah, yeah.
When
Okay.
I'm not photographing and I do travel, my wife and I, well, she accompanied me on a lot of my travel these days. We tend to go on little quests, I guess, to find film locations and movies that have been symbolic, I guess, in our lives. And this particular location is Martha's Vineyard, where of course Jaws was filmed in the 70s.
Yeah.
And this is on a little in a little harbour actually called Menemsha Harbour. And what I saw was this female police officer, Officer Gibo, and she was talking to some kids, and I thought, oh, this is I loved that New England sort of look, that style of architecture as well.
Yeah, it's gorgeous, isn't it?
And so I said, look, can I make a picture of you? And she said, yeah, that's fine. So once again, not deluxe, it's pretty obvious.
Yep.
But in bright sunlight, you've got to use the ND filter to be able to to use maximum aperture, because it's a bit useless having a Noct Deluxe and not using it at full aperture.
Absolutely. Why would you spend all that money and not use it at 0.95?
Absolutely. So, and what I was able to do is I was able to hold enough familiarity with what was going on in the background, with obviously the architecture and the window, and having it slightly off center, but also importantly, I made multiple exposures because there was a little bit of a gentle breeze, and I felt the flag would lose context unless I had some fullness.
The flag is just right.
It is, isn't it?
Classic. If you draw a cartoon of a flag, you always put a little curve in it, don't you?
Yeah.
So it's exactly in the right place and recognized. Yeah. I was just looking at the camera a second ago, and I was just seeing what the highest shutter speed was. This is an M10. So a 4,000th in full sunlight at 0.95 it's overexposed, isn't it? That's why you need an ND filter. What would it be? 8 or 12? You might need a 1 or a 2 stop ND on it, or a variable. But,
mine's a variable stop.
You've got a variable. Just dial it back down again. Now, it's a good tip actually. But for those of you who are about to buy themselves a Noct Deluxe, consider a 62mm ND filter for it as well.
Yeah.
Now, this is definitely not America or Australia, but I do recognize that because I believe that we met up in Iceland for about half an hour.
We did. It was the fastest meal we've ever had together.
Yes.
So we'd heard about this plane that had to make an emergency landing after running out of fuel on the beach. I think it's at Vic or somewhere nearby, but it's a black
Vic,
sand.
yeah, it's up the coast from Vic a little bit.
Yeah, and so I had ideas in my mind that we could drive there in our little Ford Fiesta, and just walk to the plane. Well, interestingly, anybody that's ever been there, and you're included there too, Nick, you sort of park and then you walk for about 2 hours to get to the place.
It's quite a long way through the sand, isn't it? Yeah,
it's a long way.
Yeah.
As my wife discovered, it's there ain't no bathrooms in Vic. So
that's a story for another day, for sure.
It is indeed. But we did spend a lot of time. I explored a lot of the angles of the plane. I've got a very big passion, not just through travel for aeroplanes, but I've had a couple of scary rides in planes over the years. Yes. And we were able to stay there until everybody had left, and we had some rain, which of course sorted out the tourists.
It's a popular spot, isn't it? It spoils it because there's always somebody looking out the window or climbing on top of it or whatever.
That's right. Yeah. So everyone left, and we stayed behind, and I was able to explore every different angle of the plane, and I made this particular image, and my wife was actually looking at where the nose used to be of the plane, and I happened to make this picture, and this is another one actually that went into the Leica Academy inspiration book.
That's right. So it did too. Just the light in this is gorgeous. I mean, this is so luminous, that sort of clearing storm. I mean, I love the light you get when rain has gone through and the sun just pops out. And I also just love the fact that you've got a figure stood there it just balances the picture and holds your eye in the shot, and it's kind of incongruous at the same time. So I think this is a very successful picture. It's well chosen by the Academy book organizers. I'm going to click there and just see how many we got left. Oh, we just got one more. So this is the last one, which I probably should have showed at the beginning, because this is the the Sunday Age. Actually, maybe that brings the story back to the beginning in a nice way to show how that picture was actually published on the Sunday Age. We did believe you, of course, but here's the proof. Howard backs Bush on UN. My goodness, that's a blast from the past. So that was 2002.
That's right.
Yeah, it even says there. Yeah. So look, Mark, that's really interesting to see. To hear the stories behind the pictures. It's something I've found a lot of people who are interested in photography find inspirational, is to not just the image and enjoying it, but then they find out the context. And I don't mean shutter speeds and apertures per se, but just how that picture came to be. And I think one of the lessons that a lot of people learn from hearing these stories is that a lot of this stuff happens, I won't say randomly, but there's a lot of serendipity involved, particularly in travel and documentary work. And I think, Mark, would you agree with that?
Absolutely. A lot of the best pictures I've ever made have been just, they've been roads that I wasn't going to go down, or the time I wasn't going to get up early, or the time where I pushed on even though the weather was really terrible. It's always just going that little bit beyond your
Yeah,
comfort zone.
yeah, yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's the key.
yeah. Yeah, keep at it. Get
Yeah,
beyond the comfort zone. Just keep trying. And if
yeah.
you're there, you can't get a good photograph if you're at home. You've got to be out there. And what was it? Minor White said F8 and be there. Or in Mark Strawn's case, F0.95 and be there.
Good
And
one.
on that note, I'm going to thank Mark for his time and sharing some of his insights and his photographs for us, and invite you to keep an eye on the Academy website, because as soon as we're back to normal, then Mark will be available to do some workshops. Now, I should also mention, we do have some opportunities to do one-on-one sessions online with any of our instructors. So if you want to pick Mark's brains or get a photo critique of your work, then check out www.leica not hyphen academy.com.au. I'll put the link at the end, and you can maybe have a one-on-one session with him. So Mark, thank you very much indeed. And I'll see you in Melbourne one day.
Thanks, Nick.
All right, then. Talk to you later, guys. Bye-bye.